I'm Krystal Blackard.
And I'm Lindsay Reynolds.
We're seekers of truth, willing to ask the hard questions and cut through the industry smoke.
On Simplified Success, the podcast, we strip sales and marketing down to what actually works, front end to back end, so you can scale without the burnout.
Because real growth isn't just about numbers. It's about optimizing how your business runs so you can grow yourself, grow your paycheck, grow your team, and grow your leadership.
And most importantly, making it all happen without the fluff or the chaos.
This is Simplified Success.
Hello, welcome to this episode. We're so excited. So we are fresh off of recording. This is one of the part of the series where we do have somebody else on the podcast. I also want to note a couple of things before the podcast starts. If you're watching the live video or the video, or you hear me pause periodically, I'm actively fighting a cold-ish thing, so I have like a raw face. So zero judgments here, and also I look fancy. I look dapper and fancy in my sweatshirt. So I hope you guys are all having an amazing day. Today's episode is really, really fun. We got the opportunity to bring somebody in that again is one of those people that you probably wouldn't get a chance to have a conversation with, and kind of walk through an amazing journey. Everything you're going to hear through this episode is so fantastic because it goes back to the true fundamentals that make a difference in how you're able to grow as a leader, grow as a person, and be able to reach the goals that you're looking for, but in the most intangible, fun story style. But you can like totally hear the nuggets as you're going through it. So I'm going to let Krystal introduce this guest, and then we'll roll into it.
Yeah, today we were so honored to have on with us Jennifer McKinney. She is an $8 million industry owner in social selling, network marketing, all the things, affiliate marketing. She's an absolute genius at just everything she touches. You're going to hear it. She's done amazing things, so you're going to have to listen to it. I would like to clarify, though, there's a couple of really key things you're going to extrapolate from this conversation. And a lot of that is letting your principles be the guiding light and really help you focus on what is ever going to always keep you in that super focused zone. And we are going to include a resource here in the show notes, our Untangled Journal. It's absolutely free. Lindsay and I created it, but that resource aligns beautifully with what Jennifer talked about, with being able to walk in that openness, understand that calling, to be able to let some of those things go, to not operate in fear, and how that has absolutely empowered her to be able to create the life and the businesses that she's been able to do. So if you're wanting a starting place and you want like something tangible to download, that is going to be linked in our show notes, and it's absolutely going to be a game changer, along with a lot of other really cool resources. You can always go to K as in Krystal, L as in Lindsay, consultingco.com to find our full list of resources, and then we're going to link some cool stuff from Jennifer as well. So you guys enjoy the show. Hey guys, welcome. We are here today with Simplified Success, the podcast, and Lindsay and I could not be more excited. First of all, if you're catching this in real time, it's the first episode of 2026. I know sometimes we don't time step things, but 2026 is going to be an epic year, so I'm going to go ahead and speak it. And I could not be more, I don't even know the word, excited. Like, I have a couple of people in my very close circle that I completely like fangirl and I've looked up to. Jennifer McKinney is one of those people, one of those humans. I met her in business actually very early on. Oh gosh, Jennifer, it's been over a decade. Like, that makes me feel
crazy.
Yeah. But quickly, like, again, did not work we do not have any monetary, like, we did never like make money off of each other. I know MLM, right? You're like, oh, do you make money? No. We just became fast friends because we very much fought for the same really high standards, high moral principles, and really connected on that, and love jam session together. So you guys, Jennifer is absolutely a genius at sales processes. She's absolutely a genius at sales. I have seen this girl sponsor more people in a month than most people could do in 2 years. I have seen her absolutely go viral. She's had people like Charlie Kirk retweet her posts. Amazing. Just the insanity and the fire and the fierceness and the passion and the absolute fun that this girl brings is just life-changing. And so I cannot wait. Multiple $1 million earner in the industry, leader of thousands, tens of thousands of women. She has created multiple incomes and revenue streams. I have never seen her touch something that she didn't absolutely just turn into absolute magic. And so it is such a great honor to have Jennifer McKinney on with us. Okay, are you going by McKinney or are you going
I'm going by, I know it is hard to keep track. Well, yes, Jennifer McKinney. That's what you can call me. That's what I go by. Thanks, Krystal. Thank you, Krystal.
You're welcome. I just love you big. I don't know if you can feel those vibes over this, but I just love you big. And Lindsay and I are so honored to have you here. And it's so much fun to get to sit in a room with greatness like you. And you know I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Jennifer and I have collaborated on things. We have worked together. We have traveled the world together.
Mm-hmm.
I've even hosted Jennifer's kid at my house for a sleepover. Like, we are real sincerely super friends.
Yes. And I mean, it gets like that, right? When you run in those same circles and we built together, for sure that happens. But also, I think between you and me, for sure, Krystal, there is this like attracts like, your vibe attracts your tribe. And there was something so genuine about you that like we just kind of saw the authenticity in each other and we just felt that similar just alignment and focus that I've always felt with you. And then to be able to then, collaborate together, even though we've never JV'd, we don't get money off of each other, didn't with any company we've been with. There's like a heart connection and just a spirit and alignment that I love. So I'm so excited to be here, girls.
Yes,
well,
absolutely.
there's something, so it was funny when we got on the call. So in that previous company, in that world, like I knew of Jennifer. So I think it's interesting when you talk about like the reputation. So like a lot of if you've been in big rooms with big leaders. So like in that scenario, Krystal and Jennifer were at the same sort of level from a leadership perspective. So obviously they're going to be fast friends, right? If they get along, they're going to have a lot of opportunities. But when you're not at those levels, you hear a lot, right? You hear who's kind, who's not, who will help, who won't, who's real, like how like they are on stage and who's not. And something I can completely attest to in every place, because it was funny, Jennifer was like, should I know you? And I was like, no, probably not. Like I talked to you maybe once or twice, but here's what's really fascinating. And I think speaks to everything Krystal was saying is that in every room, in every conversation, anybody ever talking about Jennifer, whether they were close or far away, never had anything but amazing things to say. She helps everyone. She's kind. I remember her letting us into stuff that had no monetary benefit for her, for us to be successful. She let us into her group. She let us into her stuff. And so I think it speaks volumes in who you are, like from my perspective, because I didn't have that kind of direct connection with you, but I saw played out in real time the way in which you touched a lot of people, but also you were never talked about in those corners as that person.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you for saying that.
Jerk. And so I think it's like, I didn't tell you this till right now, but I think it's like, I want to note that everything Krystal is saying is both true when you're close to Jennifer, but was very much the reputation that she carried across the organization. So I think it's an important thing to.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
That was a very accurate description. Completely agree. Like Jennifer has zero scarcity mindset, and that's probably one of the things that sets you apart in one of your zones of genius and some of your God-given giftings. Absolutely.
Completely agree. But yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there for everyone to know, because I think you hear people say this and it's like, oh, well, of course they got along. They were in the same, or I guess it's not really true because a lot of times people don't get along as top leaders, but you know what I'm saying. I thought it was important for you to know. You have a good reputation.
Thank you. Yes. Well, right? One of the expressions I like, girls, is authenticity over posture, right? Like I do love to like come across, and project and look and have, that's important to me, but true authenticity and like who I really am is so much more important to me than how I come across. And that's what I value in other people too, right? And so I truly value who someone really is. So Lindsay, when I hear you saying that, like I'm thankful to hear that, and I receive that because it's about who I am and not the surface me that you might see, right? So thank you.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I'll let Krystal kick off from here.
Jennifer, there's so much of your story that I want to unpack, and I mean, we could probably be here for 2 weeks talking about it because it's so cool. But like, take us from the beginning. Like, what dove you into a career of leadership, of network marketing? Like, it's spun off in so many directions. You've done so many things. You've done one-off projects. Like, you've been such a like just a leader in so many facets, but also just breaking new ground for people. And like causing movements that weren't done before you decided to make that move. And it's so powerful. So just talk to us about how this came about, because it's just, I mean, obviously there's the tip of the iceberg and we see like all the successes, right? But there's got to be some hard points in there too. So just take us through your journey a little bit.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, to rewind a little bit further than I've probably ever shared with you girls, really, way before either of you knew me. Before I was even married, I was in college for art, actually, and I wanted to be an artist. I ended up becoming an art educator and spent about 7 years. My first real big girl job was actually creating an elementary school art program in a district that hadn't had art in like 30, 40 years. They had been budget cut. The district brought it back in. And because I had this, art background and then education, fresh out of college, I built this art program for a public school system. And I loved it. In hindsight, I think I do have lots of strengths that I've developed over the years, and lots of ways I've gotten kind of pushed into like loving leadership. And yes, tons of things that have, I've been hit by the life train. I've actually personally derailed my own, life train myself. But, looking back to those early days, I have always loved creativity and thinking outside the box. And I loved building this art program. And of course, art is creative, right? Color. And I mean, you can see I've got paintings all over my room. One of the things I did in the summers was I made an at-home program where some of the mostly girls from the elementary school art classes would come to my house, and we would have these, I turned the upstairs of my garage, which was this lofted area, into this little mini art school, which is funny. Even that was 20 years ago or whatever, 25 years ago. Even now, you can't imagine as a teacher bringing students into your home, right? Just how times have changed. But it was just this really, I loved to connect with my students and with their parents and to just build something creative. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of my first, career. I ended up getting married and having 5 children in back to back.
Like really close.
Like really close together.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. I did have a baby every year for 5 years. And, to this day, I do believe like motherhood is my highest calling. I believe it's who God created me to be 100%. It's not all he created me to be though. And, there's leadership involved in being a parent. Definite, collaboration and living and learning and hurts involved in a marriage. But after I had the kids, and, I was no longer teaching school, really how this sort of network marketing and people and money and influence and leadership and principles started was actually, Krystal, you mentioned, right, over a decade ago when you and I both got involved with network marketing. Singular, the company we were with, was my very first company.
Right.
And it was sort of stepping into that truly was, it opened up the door to so many avenues of positive change, not only to help change myself, but then for me to learn how to help and lead other people too. My story started with weight loss. Krystal's story was different. She didn't have weight to lose. That wasn't her, big goal. For me, I had a lot of weight to lose. So spoiler alert for anyone who doesn't know, which I'm sure many of you watching and listening don't. I actually used to tip the scales at almost 300 pounds. I was almost 300 pounds at my heaviest. And so the physical weight loss, the physical transformation was really sort of first. Girls, I came into this company. I started taking the products and eating better ways and losing weight. That led to, I had ups and downs there too, right? No product or plan or meal plan or shot or pill or anything works, but I say unless you work it and unless it really becomes who you are. So in the early days, it was more like I was following a diet, but we can get into that. It was up and down. But changing my body physically, which I ultimately did, I have lost about 156 pounds and have kept it off for years and years and years. Wouldn't have happened without learning and implementing some principles of leading people that I learned, Krystal, partly through our friend and wonderful mentor, Steve Elder,
yes.
Who I met because of Singular. So right. I would say, that entrance into the world of network marketing and health and weight loss really was what opened up the door for me to be able to lead myself and then eventually use my voice to help other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was a catalyst moment.
It totally was.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I love how you said, like, we talk to our clients about this a lot, and we talk about it in TBA all the time, is like, you have to lead yourself first for anyone to want to be led by you.
Yeah.
And like, that's such a big gap that I think people
Right.
forget. It's like, why isn't anybody following? Well, you're not leading. I think that's such an interesting point, and that was fantastic.
Yeah. I think that's a great call out. And so, okay, so you started this journey, you're losing
Yep.
the weight. And so when did you decide for the very first time that you saw a financial opportunity? Because I would like to preface this, like, you're not just a dabbler. Like, you've made multiple million. Like, can you say how many millions you've made in the industry, Jennifer?
Like, yeah, over 8.
Over 8 million. That's a lot. That's a lot. Like, close to being an 8-figure earner, not just 7. That's a big deal. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, when did you have that shift? Because going from a teacher that teaches art,
Right.
and going from a multiple $1,000,000 earner, and having that kind of that health barrier in between there's some pretty big, like, roadblocks right there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're a school teacher and then that's, what you're educated to be, you don't certainly have this idea that making a lot of money in your life is going to be possible. That's not why you get into teaching. I think I made about $18,000 or $19,000 a year was my full-time teacher salary, when I got started. So
And ironically, you probably made that in a week during some of your just kind
Right.
of mediocre times.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't long before I was making that in a month, right? And then certainly in a week. But I guess to kind of go back to those early days, it was nothing that I could picture or believe or even really thought that I wanted. It didn't seem possible. And I think what started to help me move in that direction, which ultimately, right, I've made over $8 million, was seeing that it was possible for other people who were moms and teachers and hairdressers and dental hygienists and, all assortment of people that I saw becoming successful, not just in our company, but in the industry. It began to be like, okay, well, if they can do it, why not me?
Right.
And then I think taking this creativity that I have, I used it in different ways back then to build this art program and to create artwork and to create these classes. I do think God gifted me with this creativeness where then I could find creative ways to build systems and communicate things to people and creative ways to get large groups of people excited about things, which led to, sales. You mentioned like, oh, she's great at sales. In true, sales is just sort of the outcome. It's
Right.
the thing that happens when you do really lead and connect with people and what they really want. And seeing that was possible. I remember my first month with Singular, and I didn't do a ton that month. I mean, I feel like I pushed the pedal a little bit. I didn't know what I was doing. I certainly didn't give it a ton of effort. And I more than doubled my monthly, teaching salary just
Right.
that first month. And I remember having the very distinct thought, if I could do that with just a little bit of focus and not really understanding and giving it a little bit of effort, what could I do if I gave it big effort? And that is something else about me that I think you girls know. I
Right.
have many weaknesses. One of my strengths is that I go all in on something, which actually, can come back to bite me too. But if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So when I decided to be like, okay, if I can make that much in 1 month without really trying too hard, what could happen if I put my focus into it? So I became a student of learning this industry and learning how to become, Lindsay, to your point, right? Lead myself so that then I could lead other people. But yeah, that income thing was wild when I first heard there was a girl, making $25,000, a month. I'm just like, if I could just make 5,000, I mean, that would
Right.
be beyond, So I think to be able to first believe it, right? It's like the 4-minute mile, right? Nobody ever broke it until somebody broke it. And then like, oh, it's possible. Once you see it's possible, then it becomes possible for you to go for that too.
Yes. Okay, so I want to like pull something out that you just said. So oftentimes I notice this, and I went through this myself. So like this is completely calling me out, myself out. Oftentimes when we get into something like this, a situation where we grow really, really fast, we have all this
Yes.
success, right? Our success outgrows our leadership. And then you have to like almost revert, you almost fall back to where
Mhm.
you really are, and you become very painfully aware of your lack and your inability to lead at that capacity. And I see time and time again, Jennifer, so many leaders like jumping up and getting really fast and making lots of money, and then just doing that constant yo-yo. And something that I've really noticed about you that I feel like you're really, really good at is you've really been able to like take out the yo-yo. Like, not saying that you haven't had your roadblocks and your hards, but it's like you really figured that out, but you own it to a fault too, and that's something I've always really admired about you. So just talk a little bit about that.
Oh, that's such a good point. And it does happen when you grow quickly with anything. Absolutely. You get to this spot where people think, and you actually think, oh, I have more skills in leadership than I really do, because we haven't had a chance to go through the fire and grow. Our success outgrows us. And you mentioned, you can kind of fall back and realize where you're really at. One of two things can happen then. One is you're like, okay, I can't do this. I'm a fraud. I'm out. Or
Right.
people see you and you don't ever grow. The other is you push through it and you decide and determine to grow yourself so that you can become more, and then your success becomes even wilder. And I appreciate you saying that you haven't seen the big swings in me. I will certainly say, when I grew quickly with Singular and hit $1 million and hit all these ranks, I certainly had a sense of a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? Where it's like,
Yes.
this success was outgrowing me.
Yeah.
One of the things, I don't know if this is what you meant to allude to or not, but I do think I enjoy doing, even though it's uncomfortable, is being vulnerable and actually being honest about areas where I still struggle and saying, hey, I really don't know how to do that. I really struggle in this area. I want to, lead this team, but also I'm going to let you know, sometimes the stress overwhelms me and I just cry in bed and eat white bread, eat a loaf of white bread. And I think people can resonate also with someone who shares their realness and their faults and their struggles. I think in some way that helps me stay grounded and not have to project myself as someone who is perfect or has it together. Like, I've shared my struggles as I've gone along. I think that creates, clout, and it's also has allowed people to watch me grow and develop. And to your point, Lindsay, like, actually see who Jennifer has become compared to who she used to be. I have a long way to go, but I think that's a way that I've worked to stay balanced. But it's tricky when you make a lot of money, and it can easily mess with your head and make you think you're at a spot where you're not yet. You got to go through the battles and truly the war, to be able to earn that, even if your income is already there, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's a really, really important thing for people to note, especially as they're growing and they're coming into business, they're coming into leadership. Like, I feel like that's the place where people get stuck. It's kind of that death spiral, right? We've seen that analogy before. You're going up and then you kind of come down. And it's the people that can come back from that.
Yeah.
And it's those tools in your tool belt that I feel like
Time.
set that apart from that death spiral, to being able to come back into it after you've had one of those, just because in business and entrepreneurship, that's going to happen, right? And
Yep.
in health and wellness and honestly everything in life, that's a pretty realistic possibility. And having the tools is so important. So tools is one of the things that I've always known you best for. So you are genius with tools, and I kind of want to like get into. You decided that after you lost 156 pounds, and by the way, you guys, if you have not gone and stalked Jennifer on Facebook, you should. She's got a rockin' hot body. She's really fun to follow. She's hilarious. She's heartfelt. She's an amazing writer, too. But you developed this incredible, like, food plan with the macros and this ecosystem and this affiliate. Like, talk a little bit about this next thing, because I feel like, that was just absolutely, that was one of the most genius business models I've ever seen come out.
Well, thank you for that. Tools are super important, and I knew that to be able to claw your way back and to really grow to the next level, you needed tools. And you're kind of alluding to this transition time that I had in my life, my career. So let me kind of explain what happened, Krystal, where I was, and then set that up, and then kind of speak to this use of tools. So I was in just pure network marketing, right, for years and years and years, over a decade. You know, you and I both know that realm and that company well. And what happened really was I got to a point, this was maybe about 4 years ago, where I wanted to be able to have an even more direct positive impact on people, like, and also leverage my reach. To be able to do that, you have to use tools. So what I did was, again, I spoke earlier about our friend Steve Elder, and I was brainstorming with him some because he did this leadership consulting for corporations, and here I was, this network marketer, so I knew how to, sell products and speak on stage and lead teams. I began, because I lost all this weight, right, to be asked a lot, well, Jennifer, how, what exactly did you eat? Like, exactly how did you do this? Or I got tons of questions about that. And here's what happened, girls. What people were asking, what they thought they wanted was just like, okay, eat this, and it will work for you. But I was hesitant to do that. Not because I couldn't develop an eating plan, because I did. We'll talk about that in a second, right? Color coded and all. I mean, I was an elementary school art teacher. I'm very organized, very colorful. That's important. But here's the big but, as I say, which, by the way, I don't have one anymore. I was not aware that I didn't. After I lost all this weight, one of my best friends, Holly, says to me, you don't have an ass anymore. I didn't know that. I thought it was great and adorable and small. And she's like, no, there's nothing. It just drops off. So ever since she told me that, now I'm like slightly paranoid about it, because I'm like, I don't
just do some more squats. That's fine.
I don't know. I just don't. There's some point when I don't know.
You have that no acetol syndrome.
Right. Well, I'd still rather have that than, be as heavy as I was. But I was like, thanks, Holly, for pointing that out.
That's funny.
But what they thought they wanted to know was this eating plan. Here's what they needed to know, though, and here's what I realized that I wanted to give them. I wanted to be able to impart principles that then would govern all aspects. Eating, yes, we could get into that niche, but also would help you when you align to these principles of, belief, identity, purpose, effective work habits, would also help with income creation, would also help with relationships, would also help in so many ways. I wanted to teach principles, but then use weight loss and meal plans as sort of the widget, as the niche. I didn't want to start here. I wanted to start at this bedrock, so that I really was leaving people with something that would change them. And then as they leverage that for eating, for example, they could lose weight. So how I did that was, yes, I created meal plans. I actually have, I won't get into it here. It does really excite me, though, because it's all colors. I have like all these different, because I follow a ketogenic type of eating. I've tweaked it to make it work for me. I tweak it to make it work for my clients, but it's definitely a high fat, high protein, limited refined sugar and measuring ketones and all that. So I've created this meal plan system where all the breakfasts are purple, the lunches are red, the dinners are green, the snacks are, blue and orange. And it's a mix and match thing. So that instead of having to feel like, what should I make today? Or I don't know how to, as long as you pick one from each color, you're going to be all within the macros for the, average woman to be able to lose weight. And then I personally tweak it with my clients from the side. I made it very simple to follow, but to come back to the principles, they're all based and rooted in a place of these principles, again, of identity and belief and who am I? What am I capable of? I know you said we don't necessarily talk about the time-sensitive stuff, but it's the beginning of 2026, right. The very beginning of January. What's on everyone's mind in the beginning of January? New Year's resolutions, right? And while I love them, the power doesn't come in the New Year's resolution. It comes in, aligning really where we are. Do we even believe that we have the power to change? Because if we don't, we'll just be at the gym for 2 weeks, right? So I ended up building this thing, and I was like, well, people can Venmo me and they can buy the meal plans, right, Krystal? They can pay me for coaching. I do these leadership sessions for groups where I teach about the principles. But I ended up finding, I don't know if we've talked much about this, the website Kajabi, which is a really great platform for content creators. There's, people who are photographers or, real estate photographers, or they know how to fold origami, papers, and anything that you can imagine doing, you can put your content there and then people can go and purchase it. So this took away from me having to invoice people and collect money every month. They could just get on a subscription there. I can host content there. I can put meal plans there, and seminars that I've taught, and people can go on, buy them, watch them. And again, that goes back to leverage, one of the principles I love. I don't think you're really going to be able to make a lot of money and reach a lot of people unless you use tools. So I was able to find some of those, platforms like Kajabi to put my content on, create these meal plans, create these. And from there, it's really grown into, not only years of meal plans, but also how do we teach, even through hardships, right? Like gaining weight through the holidays. Sure, there are people that gain weight through the holidays. How do we get our mindset back to that? What about when something terrible happens to one of your kids? What about when you get a divorce? What about when something, you have a personal health crisis? The same principles that get you out of it are the same ones that will get you out of post-holiday, weight gain, as long as you know those principles. So I'm still working on it, on how I want to tweak these tools, but leveraging, color-coded meal plans and systems, and some of these websites have been really powerful.
Talk about for your personal stuff, Jennifer, so you've created this, but what do you do on a daily basis to keep yourself accountable? What does your daily,
Yes.
You've done all these amazing things. You've conquered all these amazing goals. Talk to us a little bit about what your day-to-day, accountability, introspection, how your purpose, your work, right? What does that look like for Jennifer? How do you...
Oh, thanks for asking. I have a habit now, probably for about 5 or 6 months, of waking up early, right? And I spend 30 minutes each morning in gratitude and reflection, right? Truly thinking about and speaking about things that I am grateful for. Mm-hmm. Because there are so many negative things that have happened, that, as I said, that have happened to me and that I have done to myself in my life, that I want to be able to focus on gratitude. And I love to read the Bible. I love to study personal development books. I usually do that in the mornings as well. And I am on about week 19 of lifting weights, I've lost all this weight, right? But I didn't really get into the fitness side of building muscle, building lean muscle. And so I've been doing that for about 18, 19 weeks now, because that helps. It just helps me level things up, right? Losing all this weight and then maintaining all these years became this thing I could kind of rest my laurels on. So that's super important. Also, one more thing I want to mention is, I think this is important for anyone listening. I do have a very close group of core girlfriends who know me and trust me and who I align with, that, my very best friend, Nicole, lives in Texas, but we are still constantly texting and talking and communicating all day, because we can hold each other accountable in that way, right? For eating, for drinking, for relationships, for how we treat our kids, for, just how we live our lives. I think having accountability, which is another of the principles I love to coach from. It's so important to have accountability to yourself, right? I love to make charts. Oh my goodness, charts. Yep. Drink my water, do this, read my Bible, and work out. Tracking.
So it starts with your little bitty daily routines every single day. Just your little things. 30 minutes in gratitude, doing some strength training, drinking your water, focusing on clean eating.
Right.
And so what you're telling me is those little things come in and make a big impact. That's amazing.
Exactly. They do. I mean, it's Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect, right? Or, The Slight Edge, which is another book I've essentially those, even look back years ago at Weight Watchers, which is a great program that withstood the test of time. One of their mantras back in the day was small steps repeated. It does. You don't have to do, if you're listening to this, you don't have to start drinking your water and losing weight and doing gratitude and reading your Bible and lifting weights all at once.
Right.
It's these little things that I've added, but it's consistency. It's consistency over time that then eventually you look down and you're like, oh, my muscles are getting stronger. Oh, my bank account is getting, bigger. And it's just little things though, but it's the consistency with them. I get enough rest, right? I am intentional about that at my age. I'm 48. I'm in perimenopause. I need to make sure that I hydrate myself and I don't, those are some of the things I do to take care of myself.
Well, I think the big thing, like what I'm hearing is like small habits make a difference. But I think the other big thing is you have to have the right systems. And so it's really fascinating if you were talking through, when you started the business with the colors and you built a system for people that they could be successful in. But the only way you could be successful in that was by using another system, right?
You're absolutely right.
And so like what I keep hearing from you is like, make the systems simple, but use them and the small habits compound like exponentially. Because then you look up and it's been a decade and like you don't even recognize any part of your life from that perspective. Kind of
I love that.
change,
And it's
right?
the only way to teach it to someone else, right, Lindsay? Like I can know all these things that I do, but unless I simplify it and say 30 minutes of gratitude, an orange dinner that has this many calories, unless then I can't really duplicate it and teach it to someone else. Duplication is a big word that, Krystal and I swam in for years with the MLM industry, but it's not, it's not a bad word truly to be able to take what we do and duplicate it to have others be able to learn from it, make it their own. You do need systems. Systems are, they're super valuable.
Well, I think it's funny too, because like with your background, right, being in education and all of those pieces, like this morning, my daughter she's almost 5. She got completely overwhelmed by cleaning up a mess, right? And just like on the floor crying, I can't do it. I need help. And my husband was like, what is going on? Because he was in the middle of trying to work. And I was like, she doesn't know the first step. Right. And so I was like, why don't you just do this thing? And then once you do that, so I literally gave her each step because she's almost 5. So she doesn't have the capacity to do that at this point. And she was able to do it all. But I think it's funny because like to your exact point, like you grow up and people are like, oh, just eat healthy and here's all 86 steps. And then you just want to like lay on the floor and cry because you're like, I don't even know where to start.
Absolutely.
Like parenting.
I use that analogy.
I use
that analogy a lot, actually, Lindsay, like when it comes to, exactly. Like, oh, just work harder, make more money, get a different job, eat less, but work out more and eat less. Like it sounds great, but that is tantamount to telling like when my children were little, that would have been like me walking up to my kids, before it was time to get dressed for church or whatever and saying something like, okay, go clean up the playroom. I mean, there is no way that these little kids were going to be able to clean up the playroom. That's too big of a task. So you know what I would do? And I bet you guys as moms have done this, and maybe Lindsay, you still do. I would do something like, okay, guys, we're going to go to the playroom. I'm going to set a timer and each of you get a basket and we're going to see how many toys you can pick up before the timer goes off. Yeah. Well, they can wrap their little minds around that. And then it becomes kind of a competition and a game. And that's still something that I do to myself. Okay, sit down. And if you work on your bills until 3:00, then you can get up and go watch 5 more minutes of your, crime show. I don't have TV. I haven't for 19 years, but I still, have an iPad and have access to, YouTube. And I love to watch crime shows. So I will reward myself by breaking these things down into these small, but yeah, you have to have a system. Or, the hula hoop, throw the hula hoop on the floor into the toys. And then the kids just pick up what's inside of the hula hoop, right? Rather than clean your whole house.
That's a really
great
one. I guess I'm going to have to go order a hula hoop.
Yeah.
It probably works for us too, like just fold the clothes inside of this hula hoop, Lindsay. That's all you got. And usually once you get going though, like really, it's been said that it's the start that stops most people. Right? Sure. How do I even start? But a lot of times, like if you have a task that you're avoiding doing because you hate the thought of doing it, if you just put on your to-do list to just start it, just throw the proverbial hula hoop and pick up what's in the hoop. Often you'll find that once you get started with that, now the hardest part is done. And you may as well just continue and clean the whole playroom. It doesn't, it doesn't always happen, but often it gets that going.
No, for sure.
And totally so it's the start that stops most people. Once it's rolling, it's like, oh, when all that part's over, the getting the momentum going, I may as well just finish it. And that applies to a lot of things.
That's such a good nugget. I like that one.
That's so good.
I love
Okay,
it.
okay, I want to like shift a little bit too because you got me thinking about some of the things that I've just really noticed. So, systems, structure, habits, daily habits, they really compound. So, what I'm seeing now is you're really coming into your 2.0 season, right? I feel like you're just, it's the butterfly effect, right? You're just really, and you've made some big life changes.
Mm-hmm.
You've made some big pivots, and they just suit you well. Like you just are walking in this new abundance. But right now, like one of the words that I would really feel like resonates with you is the word movement. Like you do not care who agrees with you, who doesn't. If you agree with it, you will die on a hill for it. And you will bring passion, you will bring purpose, you will bring intellect, you'll bring facts, and you will bring like just like healthy conversations around it to help people understand it and do it in a way that creates this like rally around you, Jennifer. And it's amazing how you create these movements. And so I've seen you do it with like political campaigns. I've seen you do it with your children and battles that they're facing. I've just seen you do it in such an amazing capacity. So I want you to talk a little bit about this fire because as a friend who's got to see you through the last decade, you've always had this in you, but I feel like it's just been stoked. And this fire is just coming alive. And you just have this like, I don't care. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. And this is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So talk a little bit about that because that's a muscle you had to grow.
Oh, well, thank you. And, I look back and I've always had strong beliefs that I believed in, but I've certainly not always been someone who, to use your words, like would make these hills that I would die on. I would still rather like be a little more shy, like let someone else lead the charge. I don't need to spend all the energy on that. What if they think that I'm kind of weird if they don't like my opinions?
Right.
I think part of what helped develop that in me was unfortunately going through a divorce. And as a Christian, growing up in a believing household and then having a marriage where both of us really did, want to honor God, and then getting divorced was a big deal because, you're always told, you read in the Bible, we don't get divorced. And there's this mindset that is very challenging for, I'll just speak on behalf of believing women who get divorced. It's like, it's so taboo, and of course there's always so much more to the story, and there's a lot to unpack, but at the end of the day, it was what needed to happen in my situation. But I faced certainly some scrutiny from people, but also the potential, right, of being looked at as this Christian woman who got divorced, and these things just really juxtaposed. And what I really had to become okay with, ladies, was realizing, I am who I am. I'm a child of God. I'm totally flawed and also aware of my strengths. And I don't have to pretend that I'm, that I'm not flawed, but also don't have to keep quiet about what I know to be true, And so it kind of emboldened me a little bit, going through the divorce for sure. But what happened is, especially, you mentioned Charlie Kirk, actually, which just his murder, like, is, we could go off on that forever. It's heartbreaking, and it shows so much about our society and where things are at. It's heartbreaking. But rewind about a year and a half ago during the last election, I've always been pretty outspoken about, right, like my marriage, my divorce, and my faith, and my weight loss, and politics, and I've spoken positive things about what I think Trump believes about this, and I've spoken negative things about him too, right? That's the interesting thing, is like, I don't care. I'm not going to try to just appease one side or the other. But one movement in particular that ended up happening, that I feel I was open to was during the last election, when Kamala Harris and Donald Trump were campaigning. Was I actually went to a Trump rally in my town, and then I went to a Kamala Harris rally as well, because she'd been kind of saying her rallies were bigger, his were smaller, and I just wanted to take it all in, And anyway, I ended up catching her saying something on film when I was there that ended up going viral. Elon Musk tweeted my video and Donald Trump tweeted it. It got like 44 million views. And what that, I don't know that I necessarily, created any movement. I think I'm a really good on the ground storyteller of like shining light onto what's happening. Hey, I'm not the only Christian woman who's gotten divorced. Here's what it feels like to me. Hey, you know what? I'm not the only person who feels weird about Kamala Harris saying that Christians don't belong at her rally. I can kind of magnify stories because of the way that I have a social media presence. So I shared it, and it went crazy. And I'll tell you what, I got it came just barely short of death threats of like, don't say this about her and that and this. And through that, girls, I'm like, I just don't care. I believe in authenticity over posture. I'm not going to be, quieted when I believe in something. And I heard her say it with my own 2 ears. There was so much gaslighting. People were telling me she didn't really say that. She didn't really say that. But again, it comes down to the principle of standing up for what I believe. And what I believed in that moment was, I don't think she should have said that, but here it is. Y'all decide for yourselves. And so politically, I've always I've spoken up for myself. And Krystal, I think you're right. That muscle didn't always used to be there.
Yes.
That definitely got strengthened in me when I saw, it didn't kill me. In fact, I feel great. You know what? Yeah, screw what people think. And I don't intentionally go out to be. Okay, sometimes I do intentionally like to be. I do like to poke the bear. I do. I'm not trying to hurt people, but I'm not trying to be a wallflower.
Right.
I'm not.
But I think you bring people back to critical thinking and critical thought. And right now, in a world that is so magnified from everybody doing the bright and shiny, taking AI, losing their brain power, taking in just like, it's like we're living in this little shiny box of everybody does everything the exact same. I think you bring that critical thinking and that realness back to reality, and that's something that I've always very much respected about you. And you really challenge people's thoughts and their processes, and you make people think about things. You make them uncomfortable to the point where they want to change it. That is a very, very powerful skill set that I felt like you built, and I watched you build. And that's like, I think every human has the capacity to be able to do that, right? But I've seen you, and I love how you've unpacked this journey, because you had early successes, early millions. You had some hard rock bottom moments, and then you strengthened this muscle, and you've come back, and it's like your comeback and your invention story and your 2.0 season is just bigger and better. And it's been so much fun to get to be like a friend watching you and like cheering you on. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you. I do. I received that, Krystal. And there's these early days where you're not totally sure of yourself, and you're wobbling on your own 2 feet. And then there is a 2.0 version, and sometimes it actually looks worse than the first one, right? I want mine to be better. I want mine to be stronger, and I also absolutely love what you said about critical thinking. I don't want to be right or left or up or down, or this is the way to lose weight, or this isn't the way to lose weight. I want to use my brain to really think about things, even when it's difficult. And I'm okay if you end up landing somewhere different, but I want you to think about it, and one more example of that is, I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I have 5 children. They're all now teenagers, and one is now just in his 20s. My second born, who's 19, got into marijuana and using THC and synthetic THC. And I had always had opinions on, don't use drugs, of course, from like a spiritual standpoint. And then from a political standpoint, don't tell people what to do. And so people should be able to do what they want, but there should be harsh penalties on, all that is great until it happens to one of your kids. And my son developed an addiction and actually brain damage from THC because of his age and his brain not being totally developed yet, that I never would have known about. And I became determined to, with his permission, share his story so that other parents and young people will know the damages of today's THC. And that's just one, example, because maybe a lot of us who grew up with parents who, had smoked marijuana back in the day, or, even some of us maybe did. I personally didn't, but it wasn't, it was around when I was in high school. That kind of stuff was much, much, much less potent than what it is now. This chemically derived synthetic stuff. Well, I would have had no idea. And
Right.
so in the past year, I've really made a very deliberate point to share about the dangers of THC use to, adolescents before their brains are finished developing. And girls, I get hate on both sides. People on this side are like, don't tell us that our drug is bad. People on this side, people should, okay, but let's just critically think. It's one of the really cool things that I've become aligned with as an organization that is a bipartisan.
Mm-hmm.
It's called a health first marijuana approach. And it basically says, let's forget which side we're on. Let's just look at what's best legislation for the health of Americans. And I think that's critical thinking, right? Let's forget who's right and who's left and what Charlie Kirk said or didn't. But let's look at, murdering someone, can we not all agree, right? And I think there's a lot of common ground that we can find as humans when we kind of focus on principles and on critical thinking. As I said, as much as I love to poke the bear, when we get back to the core of it, which Krystal, to go back to the very beginning of our podcast, is like there's alignment that you and I have in our focus on God and morality that comes from Him, and on living our best selves and reaching our potential. But it's under a framework that most humans can agree on. When you really think about where we're at, there's a lot of agreement.
So let me
oh, go ahead, Krystal. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're fine. I was gonna extrapolate one thought. As you're talking about these really big, powerful movements and what you do, just if you don't mind, you said you don't mind getting a little bit vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
There's something inside of you, Holy Spirit, God, your our that presence in our life. How do you determine when you know something that you're supposed to stand up for and that you're supposed to speak out at? Because I can't for 1 second look at you as a single mom of 5 kids and think that there's never been any fear. And I know, but also I've seen you overcome a lot, and wow, that's the bravery and the courage. So there's obviously a very much led part of your soul that feels very much, prompted to do that. So talk a little bit about just in that quiet space, how you kind of make those quick, because I'm sure it is pretty quick for you. I don't see you just sitting and pondering a lot. So talk a little bit about that. I'm just curious.
That's a great question. I think there's 2 sides to that. I think part of it, is the personality that God gave me, which isn't someone just sit around and mull things over. It is to take action. So I think when those kinds of things happen, it's my personality to jump into them, which can be good and bad. It can also, cause me to jump into things that maybe it isn't my season to fight for, or isn't the right thing to fight for. Mm-hmm. The other part of, I think, not that I sit and consciously think about this, but as you ask the question, Krystal, it's what I have my kids do, which is the sleep on it technique, right? If they want to buy something that they haven't been planning on buying and they want to use some of their money for it, I will always let them, but I require them to sleep on it. If they still want it the next day, then they can purchase it with their money. And what happens a lot of times is suddenly that game, that $5 upgrade on Roblox or that toy at Target the next day doesn't seem quite as worth it. And so not that, my alignment is always correct, but as I, pray and think and let God just kind of speak to me the next day, if I still feel that fired up, yes, this aligns to what God says is wrong or what true principles, I'm going to go into action. I'm not going to wait. There are times where I've gotten fired up about something. I can think of a specific example with a teacher at my kids' old school, and I was so fired up and I felt that it was so unjust, and I was going to write letters and picket and make signs. And the next day I was like, you know what? That's a mistake I could see making. I don't think this is a core issue here. I think this is a one-off thing. I think I can let this go in my spirit. So I let that one go. So I think it's a mix. Does that make sense of my personality versus feeling the spirit in me?
Yeah, I think it speaks to your level of being able to walk in forgiveness and walk in that agency and your superpower, understanding the control and keeping that and not letting everything that comes at you affect you. You being able to rise above it. And I think that's a pretty powerful attribute in leaders who will be able to be successful and are able to withstand the hits time and time again.
Well, thank you. And I didn't always used to, right? I certainly used to be much more, influenced by the wind and be even more reactive. I can still react, but I try to now respond. You guys know the difference, right? That reaction is that instinctive, but to respond is to really contemplate it and decide like what's the best move for me here. And as I've matured, I hopefully will still get better at that. I've I've become able to respond more instead of just react.
Yeah. Yep.
I love that. So much wisdom there.
So much good stuff.
It's like that concept, like write the email and then save it in your draft. Read it tomorrow.
Right. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, so Jennifer, we're going to wrap this up because we're
Okay.
going to jump over to the Backstage Pass and do your little private exclusive interview for our community, our TBA community. Parting last words. Anything you want to impart? Any extra wisdom? I mean, you're an amazing thought leader. You're just a critical thinker. You bring awareness to such important issues in our world and our time. And anything you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Well, I have a lot of things that float around in my brain all the time, but you mentioned a minute ago, Krystal, about fear. I do think one of the things that's a little more rare about me is that I don't let fear hold me back. Just as an example, last night I went out to dinner alone. I'm single. My kids were busy. I dressed up and went to a nice restaurant, and I had one of my friends who saw me that I posted that on Facebook say, "Oh, I'm so proud of you. I don't think I could ever get up the courage to go out to eat alone." And that just blew my mind, right? Because in my mind, that doesn't take much courage at all, right? And I don't think going out to eat alone is some thing that everyone needs to do. But this idea that she might want to eat out alone, but fear of, I don't know, maybe thinking that was weird, or she would be, I don't really know what was behind that, held her back. I think my parting thoughts would be, fear, there's a worship song that says this: fear is a liar, right? I think fear that your past needs to dictate your future, fear that people, aren't going to like what you say, fear that someone will look at you weird if you're sitting at a restaurant, fear that people will judge you as a mom if you expose the fact that your kid got into drugs, fear that, any kind of fear. I don't think any of it comes from a healthy place. God isn't a God of fear, right? And I think for the most part, I think my challenge is in 2026, not that we're trying to make this a New Year's thing, but it is your first one of the year. Like, how have you let fear hold you back from saying the things, doing the things, loving the things, maybe healing the wounds, asking for forgiveness, like being vulnerable? How have you let fear hold you back? And I would say, let this be the year where you go into it with a good heart and you try to do, how, you take God's guidance and let him lead you, but don't be afraid, right? Don't use fear to hold you back from anything, because I think in an earthly sense, we are capable beyond measure. And to really top it off, this earth also just isn't our home. At the end of the day, we are eternal creatures who were created for an eternity in heaven with God. And I think, I can't say final thoughts without saying, I think that's the most important thing I would love your listeners to know.
Thank you, Jennifer. Absolutely amazing. It's such an honor to have you here,
Awesome.
and I am
Thank you.
excited. We're fixing to jump over and do our backstage pass, so.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, that was like the most amazing conversation. I'm so excited. We had so much fun. Jennifer shared so many cool things, so many cool nuggets. I think one of my favorite things that she talked about was this, like her growth and ability to have hard conversations in different situations, but really be able to honor different people's viewpoints. I thought that was so great how she really seeked that out. And then talking about all those compounding of habits, and just it was such a great conversation. I had such a blast. So great.
Absolutely. So, as you guys heard, we are actually not done. We roll from the public episode into our backstage pass, which is exclusive for our Builder Academy members in the Builder Academy TBA. And in TBA, this is our paid community where we show up. Lindsay and I show up, and this is just one of the exclusive pieces that you get in there. So, the Builder Academy, basically, we teach you how to steward what you have and build from there to lay the foundation through clarity, structure, and faith-aligned strategy that sets you up to scale and build organizations like Jennifer talked about to multiple millions, like Lindsay and I have been able to do as well. And so that's what the Builder Academy is. So if you are wanting to know more about the Builder Academy, we have linked that as well down below. And just a really cool place to hang out and learn and grow in. Anything you want to add about the Builder Academy, Lindsay?
I would just say the backstage pass so the Builder Academy doesn't have a commitment, so you can jump in and jump out. But the backstage pass of what we just recorded with Jennifer, I feel like all of my most favorite nuggets actually came from the backstage pass. That was such a high quality conversation. I think the other favorite part about TBA is our bot family, which is like literally like having your entire team. It's the most amazing situation. Like, it sets you up for so much success in clarity, in execution, in process. I know I'm using all my fun Lindsay words that are not marketing fun words, but they're Lindsay words. You can read all about it in the link if you want to see. But I think the bot family and the backstage pass are like my favorite parts about.
We do have a very robust course library in there too. Actually, the value stack in there is worth over $44,000. That's what we sell it. If we sell it individually, that's what it's priced at. And you get in there for a low monthly membership. Can't say what it is at this point because it does change based on what we add in there, but it does lock in.
Jump in.
Get it, and you keep that price. We grandfather you at that price. So anyways, excited. Thank you guys.
Yeah, everybody enjoy and have a good week, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, friends.
If today's conversation helped you see your business more clearly, make sure you hit follow so that you don't miss an episode.
And if you're ready for more support, join us inside the free Simplified Success community. It's where we share resources, strategies, connections, and you really get to hang out with a lot of cool other growth-minded entrepreneurs.
Simplify your strategy, multiply your results, and make it happen. This is Simplified Success.